I'm Delilah Rumburg. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape. And as I mentioned, Ernie Allen, it is my pleasure and honor to be able to introduce him. And I asked him if there was a little bit of special information I could have to talk about him, and he says, no, there's nothing. In fact, you can just get rid of that whole bio or most of it if you want to. And I looked at it and I thought, no, there's some really good stuff in here. So I am going to read to you Ernie's very impressive bio. Ernie Allen is the co-founder of the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is a private nonprofit organization which is leading the global effort to protect children from sexual exploitation and abduction. He has served as president and CEO since it was created in 1999. Under his leadership, the organization has built a global network that includes 20 nations, trained law enforcement in 121 countries, and he has worked with parliaments in 72 countries to enact new laws on child pornography. Allen is also the co-founder of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and was the first chairman before becoming president and CEO in 1989. After 23 years, he recently announced he was retiring as president and CEO to become founding chairman. During his tenure at the National Center, more than 180,000 missing children were recovered, and the organization's recovery rate increased from 62% in 1990 to 97% in 2012. He created the 24-hour Missing Children Hotline and established the Cyber Tip Line, which serves as a national 911 for reporting suspected child sexual exploitation and much more. He created and chairs the Financial Coalition Against Child Pornography, which currently includes 34 of the world's leading banking and financial institutions working together to eradicate commercial child pornography. And he also launched a new unit to help the U.S. Marshals track down more than 100,000 fugitive sex offenders. He is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Ellis Island Medal of Honor, the Henry Clay Distinguished Kentuckian Award, and was named an I-Force Hero by Sun Microsystems for his pioneering use of the Internet for social good. He was the first recipient of Court TV's Keep America Safe Award and was named Executive of the Year by Nonprofit Times for his work in reuniting over 5,000 missing children with their families in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. He was named Hero for Youth by National Safe Place and Southwest Airlines and named one of the most influential people in security by Security magazine. And he was honored by the Australian Federal Police for his leadership in the fight against the exploitation of children. So it is my honor to introduce Ernie Allen.
Thank you, Delilah. I'm honored to be with you. And let me just take a minute to express my gratitude and admiration to President Erickson for your extraordinary leadership. I know it's a trying time for Penn State and the whole community, but Penn State is leading the nation and is making a difference in the fight against child sexual abuse, and I'm delighted to see so many of you here. 30 years ago, psychologist Dr. Robert Geiser wrote that children were being victimized through sexual abuse and exploitation in astounding numbers, and somehow America had missed it. He called his book Hidden Victims. Today, I can report to you that we have made incredible progress. As you heard from Dr. Finkelhor this morning, confirmed cases of child sexual abuse have declined over the past quarter century. Reporting has increased. Law enforcement and social services are better trained, responding more swiftly and effectively than ever before. More abusers are being identified and brought to justice. More child victims are getting help. Yet, children are still being victimized in startling numbers. And this problem remains under-recognized and underreported. Even today, it is a problem of hidden victims. We see indications that more people are sexually attracted to children than we ever believed possible. One indication is the explosion of child pornography via the internet. And of course, child pornography is misnamed. Really has nothing to do with the First Amendment, nothing to do with pornography. These are images of the sexual abuse of a child. They're crime scene photos. In 2005, the National Center reviewed 1.9 million child pornography images and videos. And the head of the National Center's Child Exploitation Division, Michelle Collins, is here with us today. Last year, they reviewed 17 million images and videos involving the sexual abuse of children. And of the child victims identified, 77% were prepubescent, 10% infants and toddlers. The prevalence of pedophilia and hebephilia is estimated to be at least 1% of the male population, a prevalence level comparable to schizophrenia. And you know the kinds of resources and attention that have been directed to the fight against schizophrenia, properly so. Sex offenders are 4 to 5 times more likely to have been sexually abused themselves as children than the general population. 2 weeks ago, our International Center announced a new global health coalition, including some of the world's most powerful pharmaceutical companies, Roche of Switzerland, GlaxoSmithKline of the United Kingdom, Merck of the United States, and others, joining with healthcare institutions like the Mayo Clinic, the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, Harvard Medical School, and others. Never before have the world's healthcare leaders come together in a joint effort to end the scourge of child sexual abuse. And our goal is literally to change the way the world responds to this hidden crisis. We'll use the public health model, undertake epidemiological research, including new efforts to measure the long-term impact on the health and well-being of the victims of sexual abuse and exploitation. We'll promote medical education. A leading physician in a meeting 2 weeks ago told us, "I spent 6 years in medical school and residency. I learned about every conceivable malady that affects children, most of which I have not seen again in 25 years of practice, but nobody talked to me about child sexual abuse." We're going to change that. We're also going to try to reach every healthcare worker worldwide through in-service training to improve their ability to recognize and to respond to child sexual abuse. We'll identify gaps in treatment, assess mental health services for victims, explore ways to identify abusers and intervene earlier, and focus heavily on prevention. The events at Penn State, the release of the Boy Scout files, and many other examples remind us that child sexual abuse is an all-too-present fact of modern life. It affects countless communities and institutions. Yet, millions of Americans still do not believe that this problem exists, and certainly not in their communities. Why? Well, first, as you heard this morning, and as you learned in such a vivid, compelling way from Sugar Ray Leonard, most child victims still do not tell. We're encouraged that today the estimates are that 1 in 3 report, but that still means that 2 in 3 still suffer in silence. And I suspect, just as Sugar Ray bared his soul to you, that there are people in this room today who were victims as children and have never told anybody. You and millions of others are America's hidden victims. Another challenge is that offenders do not match society's stereotype. We want to believe that someone who would prey upon a child sexually must be evil-looking, a menacing, frightening stranger. And yet we know that most of those who victimize children are not strangers. They're known to the child. Often they seek legitimate access to the child. So we should never be shocked when an abuser is a volunteer or an employee of a youth-serving organization, a school, a church, or any setting that provides easy, low-risk access to children. And that's why the leading child-serving organizations are taking steps, including criminal history background screening, as well as monitoring and supervision of the interactions between adults and children in their care. Dr. Finkelhor mentioned this morning that criminal history background checks are not a panacea, and he's right. But I submit it's a minimum that any organization in the child-serving business has to do. In 2003, Congress asked the National Center to conduct a pilot background screening program for youth-serving organizations. Applicants were fingerprinted and their prints sent to the FBI. Every applicant knew he was being fingerprinted and knew he was being subjected to a national criminal history background check through the FBI. And despite that knowledge, 2% of the applicants failed. We found child molesters, rapists, drug dealers. They tried to defeat the background check by providing a wrong name, a wrong address, a wrong date of birth, a wrong social security number. But the fingerprints told us who they really were. As you heard from Dr. Finkelhor this morning, we often hear a chilling word from sex offenders. At least it's chilling to me: grooming. Offenders who prey upon children groom their victims, win their confidence through friendship and kindness, establish trust, and then violate it. The child is made to feel responsible, is often intimidated or threatened by the person of trust and authority. Even if they decide to tell, will anyone listen? These children feel that no one will believe them and that too many adults do not listen to what children try to say. We've spent a lot of years trying to debunk two myths. The first is the myth of the stranger. The vast majority of perpetrators are known to the child, at least casually. Stranger concept is difficult for children to understand. Most offenders are not scary looking, or dirty, or menacing, or look like they're somebody who would hurt you. They're otherwise respectable citizens, doctors, lawyers, businessmen, religious figures, teachers, police officers, even coaches. Often they are people who outwardly show deep and enduring commitment to helping children in need. Second myth, the myth of the dirty old man. Surely someone who would sexually abuse a child must be impaired or senile. Yet, we've learned that most offenders are young, the vast majority less than 35 years of age. At least 1 in 4, and as you heard from Dr. Finkelhor this morning, the estimates are much higher than that. At least 1 in 4 of these offenders is an adolescent. And they do not have diminished mental capacity. Research shows that at least 80% are of normal intelligence levels or above. We have a lot to learn. When I talked to Dr. Staley about what I could say to you today that would be useful, when you have this extraordinary array of experts and scholars to talk to you about the essence of this problem, Dr. Staley said, why don't you talk about what you can do, what you people in this room can do, people from communities across Pennsylvania and around America. So I'm going to suggest several things, some of which you've already heard today. First, empower your children. They must always feel that they can talk to someone they trust, that they are not isolated and alone. In our society, we send a subconscious message to children. They're just kids. They don't know much. When they get to be adults, they'll have all the answers like we do. To many children, that translates as, do what the man says. All parents want their children to be polite and respectful. Yet over the past 28 years, I've talked to thousands of victim parents. And what I hear over and over again is, if we made a mistake, it's that we made our child too much a little lady or gentleman. Our message is not that we want children to be disrespectful or impolite. It is that we want them to understand that they have power. They have the right to say no. And parents must give them the skills, the self-confidence, and the self-esteem to prevent their abuse and victimization. Second, teach your children to communicate. Remember the old maxim, children should be seen and not heard? I suggest it's time to change that. Children should be seen and heard. One of the most stigmatizing accusations that we can level against a child is that he or she is a tattletale. Unwittingly, we discourage children from communicating. The key to prevention and detection of child sexual abuse is communication. Children must be taught that if something is happening in their lives that they do not feel right about and makes them uncomfortable, they need to tell an adult they trust. Third, the first line of defense is a vigilant public. All 50 states require child-serving professionals to report reasonable suspicions of child abuse. Some states require that anyone with suspicions report it. In Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Task Force on Child Protection is carefully examining existing law and considering ways to improve it. I believe that state reporting laws should make it clear that any person who knows or has reasonable cause to suspect child abuse shall report such knowledge or suspicions. These statutes typically delineate categories of mandatory reporters, including but not limited to physicians, nurses, other healthcare workers, mental health professionals, teachers and other school personnel, social workers and other child care workers, and law enforcement officers. However, all of us have an obligation to report. Some express concern about the ability of public agencies to handle the volume. Typically, reports are processed by a central hotline and then referred to the appropriate agency for investigation. For caretaker abuse, the reports are typically sent to Child Protective Services. For non-caretaker abuse, the reports are typically sent to law enforcement. Some people ask, what if I'm wrong? Human nature wants to assume that there is an innocent explanation for what we have seen. People don't want to get involved and are concerned about possible liability if they're wrong. That's why the leading laws provide good faith immunity from civil liability. The requirement is simply that the reports are reasonable and are made in good faith. Thus, our message to the people of Pennsylvania and America is very basic. The lives of our children depend on us. If you see it, suspect it, or know about it, report it. In Pennsylvania, you call the Child Line and Abuse Registry, and there are national resources like the Child Help USA National Child Abuse Hotline, 1-800-4-A-CHILD, or the National Center Cyber Tip Line, cybertipline.com, for suspected child sexual exploitation. And there are also some terrific resources which you and your community should know about and utilize, many of which have been mentioned here today. Stop It Now, Darkness to Light, RAIN, Delilah's Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape, just to mention a few. Contact them, engage them, support them. Another great resource is the Justice Department's Office of Juvenile Justice. At the request of juvenile justice officials, OJJDP will provide top national experts and researchers at no cost and provide training and technical assistance for educators, parents, youth, attorneys, law enforcement, and judges. Fourth, make sure your community has the kinds of resources in place that are needed to protect abused children. Does your community have a child advocacy center, bringing together key services and professionals in one place to help child victims? Pennsylvania has 13 CACs, with 8 more under development. And Chris Newland, who runs that program nationally, is here and will help you, I'm pretty sure. Chris tells me that Center County right now is looking at creating a child advocacy center. So Chris is right there. So if you don't have one in your community, learn more, contact your public officials about it. And finally, my last suggestion on what you can do across Pennsylvania. My premise is that each one of you has power and influence. I've always believed the old Robert Kennedy line that one person can make a difference and everyone should try. I urge you to make a difference in your community. Inform, educate, motivate, and mobilize others. It's difficult, so do not be discouraged. In much of America, there is still a sense of denial. What happened at Penn State, or the Boy Scouts, or the church, or countless other examples are aberrations. This can't happen in my neighborhood or my community. I still quote, and I've been quoting it for 30 years, what a police commanding officer told me a long time ago, and that is the only way not to find this problem in any community is simply not to look for it. The good news is that America has begun to look. The bad news is that we've only just begun. When the National Center was created 28 years ago, the official announcement was made by President Ronald Reagan in a ceremony at the White House. And he opened the center with an old corny poem by Helen Cromer. And the poem goes like this: "One man awake can awaken another. The second can awaken his next door brother. The three awake can rouse the town, turning the whole place upside down. And the many awake make such a fuss, they finally awaken the rest of us." So thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you, President Erickson, for the extraordinary leadership of Penn State University. Thank you for your commitment to Pennsylvania's children. My challenge to you today is very simple and very basic. Help us wake up Pennsylvania and wake up America. Thank you, and God bless you. Okay. Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Doug Tatey from HDFF, from Human Development and Family Studies, and here with Liz Sussman and Ian Elliott. Sorry, thank you. We have a couple of questions. I have one question I wanted to ask you about family support in response to disclosure. I was listening to Dr. Finkelhor earlier today, and I found it interesting that he presented some research suggesting that disclosure doesn't always lead to positive outcomes. And I wonder if that's because families just don't know how to respond to this, and whether, in some cases, it could lead to abject denial, that it's not happening at all. And what do we as professionals want to tell families about this kind of thing when it happens, and how best they can respond on behalf of their children?
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly right, and I agree with Dr. Finkelhor entirely. For example, he mentioned that 25% of the abusers are other family members. Are you going to disclose when the implications of the disclosure may be to divide or do long-term damage to the family? That makes the work that is being done by those who are providing services to the victims more important than ever. And one of the key points that I really agree with what David said this morning is that this is a problem that is not automatically gloom and doom. Lives are not ruined forever. Now, there's some extraordinary research out there. For example, one of the reasons we're trying to attack this problem as a public health issue is there is research that indicates that the victims of child sexual abuse are at heightened risk of virtually all kinds of both physical and medical problems long term. So early intervention is important. Lucy Berliner, I know, is here tomorrow, and one of the things that Lucy will probably talk to you about is the fact that there are early interventions that really do help the victims. We were just talking about one at our table called trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy that is having incredible impact on a lot of these victims. And if you can identify the victimization, intervene soon enough with these kinds of new techniques, which are evidence-based and are being used not only by mental health professionals and medical professionals, but in some parts of the world are now being implemented by social workers. Sub-Saharan Africa, for example, you can intervene early, and kids are resilient, and lives are not automatically ruined as a result of this. But you have to identify it, and you have to intervene early in the process. So what needs to happen is the groups in these communities need to provide support in these families. And you can't just isolate on the victim. You have to look at a broader array of services for the siblings, for mom and dad, for other people in the community. We have to overcome the stigma. And that's one of the reasons that kids don't tell. You heard Sugar Ray. One of the reasons he didn't tell is that, was this going to make him look weak? With the people who know about him, this Olympic-to-be fighter, was this somehow going to make him look like he wasn't able to deal with this problem? And these kids feel isolated and alone. If you look at the commonality, for example, in the abuse cases in the Catholic Church, in virtually every one of these cases, each child thought they were the only one. Multiple victims, but every child thought they were the only one, and they thought they had done something wrong. So it is a huge challenge to provide that kind of support in the family, in the community, so these kids aren't isolated and ostracized. And it's one of the reasons why public awareness is so important. This is a problem that America doesn't want to think about and doesn't want to talk about. But it's time to talk about it, because the only way we're going to effectively deal with it is through increasing the level of awareness and intervening sooner.
You mentioned public vigilance. What are the most effective ways to engage bystanders to act on suspicions and evidence of child sexual abuse?
Well, I mean, first of all, as I tried to talk here, I think one of the most important aspects of this is that there be a foundation in law. If there are not sanctions for failure to report, if there are not mandates to report, human nature being what human nature is, most people are going to find some reason not to report because they don't want to get involved, because they fear that they might be wrong. So I think you begin with law. Secondly, you seize those moments. You seize those teaching moments. And let me say to you, I think because of the courage of President Erickson and the leadership of Penn State, this is an extraordinary national teaching moment. Not fair to this institution. The problem that you dealt with has happened in lots of institutions, in lots of places, in most cases in relative secrecy. So I think you seize the teaching moments, you educate people that they can make a difference just through paying attention. So I think there's a combination of things. Dr. Finkelhor laid out a whole prevention strategy this morning, and I think we should try to do all of those things. We badly need better data. The gaps in what we know about this problem are very large. David's research is pioneering and has changed our understanding of this problem in this country. It is not anecdotal. it is evidence-based, it is empirical research, but there needs to be a lot more.
I have a question that was just handed to me. May I just go ahead and read it? How would you suggest we influence or partner with the media to get the word out to increase awareness, yet protect kids and families going through the system from being exploited or further traumatized?
Well, I think you begin with these kinds of dialogues. You try to communicate to the public in a way that is not hyped and exaggerated. You lay out basic facts. You make a case. And let me say to you, as someone who for the past 28 years has tried to seize those moments that are provided. I mean, there are lots of members of Congress who have said to me that they look forward to the day when we don't make law with a name attached from some murdered child or some victimized child. Would that were the case. But it took the tragedy of Megan Kanka for there to be a Megan's Law. And it took the tragedy of Adam Walsh for there to be an Adam Walsh Act. And it took the tragedy of a lot of other children. So, you know, when these things happen, we should seize them as a way to shine a light on the broader problem. You know, and I think we can do that without hyping and exaggerating or scaring people to death, because there are positive messages that we can report to the American people. The incidence of child sexual abuse, confirmed child sexual abuse, has been declining. The system is better today. We have better law. Law enforcement is better prepared. We're responding more swiftly and effectively. But one of the areas where I would differ with my friend Dr. Finkelhor in his comments this morning is I think the internet does change a lot of things. One of our concerns is that for those who are potentially inflamed by exposure to images of young children being sexually violated, for the first time in human history, they can access that content without putting themselves at risk. They can do it from the privacy of their own homes and hotel rooms. And there are now internet groups in which of people of similar interest, in which one of the prerequisites for membership in those groups is providing content that nobody's ever seen before. Now, how are you going to do that? In this era of simple technology and digital technology, a lot of these guys are creating their own. And they're doing it with children who are close to them and whom they can access. So David is right in that the basic pattern is the same. But I think one of the things we're seeing is that the internet has changed so much in this society about the way we do business, the way we communicate, the way we entertain ourselves, the way we network with others. Individuals who might have felt isolated and alone in their predilections for children suddenly discover that there are millions of people around the world just like them, with whom they can network and exchange information. It is a validation of who they are. So I'm not suggesting the internet is the enemy. The internet has fundamentally changed the way we search for and find missing children. The internet has fundamentally changed the way we protect children in the world today from abuse and exploitation, but it poses a whole separate set of risks that we have to be alert to. Sorry, I sort of droned on.
I think we're due for a short break. I want to
Okay.
thank Ernie Allen for being with us today.
Thank you.
And we're breaking till 2 p.m., correct? Yeah. 2 p.m., so be back at 2.